Building a healthy organization and a great organizational culture means thinking of the environment, thinking of the organization as an ecosystem. A system in which three important power dynamics and communities have to be aligned and reconciled. If these three communities are in conflict with each other or are not connecting well with each other, it's very, very difficult to build a healthy organization. So the first community are the tops. These are the senior executives at the top of the organization. And the tops live in the world of complexity and accountability. There's a lot on the mind of the tops. Not only do they have to think about the strategy, the vision of the organization, how to fund the business, they're often responsible to the outside world as well, in many instances to a board, and there's pressures from the board. There might be pressures via legislation or governance, through technology changes or competitor activity. So there's a lot that dominates their bandwidth on a daily and a yearly basis. But they're not the only vital community in the organization. The other community is the fronts. The fronts are the people at the front line of the business. These are the people very often who are interacting with the customer on a daily basis. And the fronts live in the world of vulnerability and uncertainty. Yet they are the ones who have to provide the service very often. They're the ones who are often providing the practical service of the organization on a day-to-day basis. And what the fronts are thinking about when they come to work every day is completely different to what's on the minds of the tops. It's often very real, very genuine, very practical bread and butter issues on the minds of the fronts. And then the final community that has to be aligned and reconciled and indeed engaged are the middles. And it's tough being in the middle. The middles get pressure from the top. They often get resistance from the fronts. Yet the middles are so important. Whether the organization works or not has got a lot to do with the capacity and the power and the leadership in the middle. This is one of the reasons why most organizations never reach their full potential, because the middles are often underserved or even undervalued. Yet the middles are the integrators in the organization. They're the ones who have to make everything work. They have to take what they get from the tops, they have to make sense of it, they have to build it out into their teams, and they have to make sure that the strategy actually lands and bringing the fronts along with them. That's what it means to be the integrators. Yet the middles are often being pulled apart from each other. They're the ones who are often having to play the political game, trying to figure out which need to serve and which agenda to be honest to. And so for a healthy organization to be built, in order for a great culture to be established, it's important to be mindful of these three communities and how essential it is to reconcile them and align them. And what makes that work? Well, first up, vision is very important. It is essential that this system is governed and organized by a central unifying vision. If the fronts or the middles and the tops are operating according to a different picture of what is important to the organization and how it's meant to function, that is a recipe for disaster. Next up, it needs information. This ecosystem has to be flush with information, full of information. Information has to be able to flow freely and easily between the fronts, the middles, and the tops. It's information, not noise. It means that we have to be able to listen to each other. It means that leaders have to speak clearly, think clearly, act clearly. Information is the lifeblood of a healthy organization and a great organizational culture. And to the extent that it's able to flow through these layers of fronts, middles, and tops is a leading indicator of how healthy the organization is. Next up is connections. This system works on the basis of human connection. The business of business is people. And ultimately, it's the ability of people to connect with people, to inspire and to be there for one another. That is a very important differentiator in building a healthy organization. And then finally, of course, trust. Trust is so vital when it comes to reconciling and aligning these three layers. If there's low trust or an absence of trust or not enough trust, you're just simply not going to get enough alignment between the tops, the middles, and the fronts.